Ooh, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Listen, the struggle was not red. I experienced it, being deprived, being oppressed, being confused. It's enough now, we're taking the power back. We're stronger than before, we're proud and too strong. The worst is over. From Cape to Cairo, Morocco to Madagascar. From Cape to Cairo, Morocco to Madagascar.
Good afternoon and welcome back to the AZAPO online political education platform. And this is where we educate for liberation. As always, at this time, at this hour, and every Sunday, we play host to you. And today, I am playing host to none other than Cde Pandelani Nefolovhodwe, the stalwart of the Black Consciousness Movement. He really needs no introduction, to all of you. He is a seasoned cadre of the Black Consciousness Movement, having joined, the struggle for liberation as a very young person. Some of you would recall, when he led student struggles at the University of the North, TEFLOP, as it was known at the time, as a member of the SRC, and along with people like Professor Harine Ngwekulu, Abraham Nkukutsetiro, and many other leaders of the student movement of the time. I mean, he was a leader of the South African Students Organization, and as a result of his leadership at the time, he got expelled for his activities, and he was also involved in the rally, the Viva FRELIMO rally that was to be held in Durban on the 12th of October 1974, which was really aimed at celebrating the ascension to power of Mozambique's liberation movement, FRELIMO, at the time after the collapse of the Portuguese colonial rule. And as a result of that, he formed part of the SASO 9, that got arrested and imprisoned in 1976. This SASO 9 trial was, the seminal contribution of Steve Biko, really defined Black consciousness in very succinct terms. And upon his release, he continued his involvement in struggle, where he joined the Light Mining and Construction Workers Union, BAMCU, in 1984, and then went on to be a founder member of NACTU in 1986. And he is a community activist. He is a revolutionary activist, and he has been there, for a very long time. And some of you would know that he was president of AZAPO in 90, and he continued to lead AZAPO as deputy president from 1992 until 2010. And he's been also involved in a lot of community activities. I do know that he is the director of Isbaya Development Trust that is responsible for cooperative development as part of what they call the Village Renewal Program, involving 56 villages in the Transkei. And he also serves as a member of the Robben Islander Council, and that is where he was incarcerated in 1976 when they were arrested as part of the SASO 9. And recently, he also chaired the Limpopo University Council for a 4-year term. Welcome to this platform, Cde Nefolovhodwe.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this platform.
Yeah, it's always great to have a stalwart of the movement here, reflecting on the path that we have taken as a liberation movement. And I'm just wondering, even before we go to the topic of discussion itself, what your reflections are, having been there as a co-founder of the Black Consciousness movement in the late 60s, and seeing what we have seen over time, more than 50 years of struggle. What are your reflections? I mean, if you reflect back to your youth at the time, and your determination, your fearlessness, so to speak, as people were exiling themselves, through the suppression of the system by the system, and others being killed, and you're so relentless in your effort to continue to engage in struggle. What are your reflections, of your involvement in struggle, looking back at the time up until now? You are muted. If you can just unmute.
Yeah. I'm unmuted. I say you are giving me a task which is very difficult for me to do in a short space of time. But my reflection would be talking about the Black Consciousness movement going forward from today. What I am noticing, which is very serious, is that the vibrant and articulate and very thoughtful and a leader in political thinking, it's becoming weaker and weaker and weaker by day. So that's my really biggest reflection, that the determination and the continued pronouncement on crucial issues that are taking place in the country no longer emanates from the Black Consciousness movement. And that death, my reflection is that it must be revived. I will also be participating with those that want to revive that spirit, because to me it is not a question of whether you are a parliamentarian or you are this. It is a question of dealing with the problems of our people. And once a movement can continue to deal with the problem of its own people, that's the end of the issue. The issue is not so much that we must prepare to go there, to go that. It is that you must be there when people are suffering. They must see someone who says, from the Black Consciousness movement, this is how we would like to resolve the problem. So that's my biggest, when I'm at home every day, I'm struggling with that matter of saying, are we leaving this country to go the direction in which there's going to be a cul-de-sac? I don't want to talk about the biggest cul-de-sac. I've written on Facebook to say, as far as I'm concerned, we are going towards what I believe to be forced change. Not forced in terms of someone doing something very drastic. It's just people are going to be tired. And when they are tired, they're not going to worry whether there is the Black Consciousness movement or not. They're just going to say enough is enough. And we're just about to reach that state. Let me leave it at that, because I came for another debate.
I had to steal that moment. When you are sitting with a stalwart of the movement who's been involved in struggle for the last 50 years, you have to steal the moment and just prick the mind of the stalwart.
Thank you very
much. Now, getting back to the discussion of the day, and it's intrinsically linked to the reflection that you've just given, community development through Black consciousness, and it really forces us to activate society in some way. So I'm really interested in your views and reflections on community development, and how that community development and activism can be activated through what you call Black consciousness. So I want you to talk to us and reflect. Community activist yourself, and you've also written a book on cooperative development in society. So it's going to be very interesting to hear your views and perspectives on what you think about community development. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to trace this topic from the time when SASO and BPC were still in action, because that's precisely where the notion of developing community from a Black consciousness perspective started. Now, during those days, there were debates when the formulation of
can you unmute?
I'm out of focus now.
No, you are okay.
I'm okay. Now, when the debates were on, there was a notion in the process of developing the SASO policy manifesto that led to us feeling that we have to commit ourselves to develop the Black community in its entirety, which means that we had to look at the Black community as a community in all its facets, which needed to be affirmed so that this Black community can be in a position to do things on its own. And therefore, the clarion call, which came with Professor Badi Pichada, Black men, you are on your own, became the center of our thinking, that we have to do things, all of them, on our own in order to develop the Black community. And then there was another rider which concentrated on what we termed total involvement in the Black community. And total involvement, it means we are to involve ourselves in all spheres of the Black community's life. Whether you are in church, whether you are a business person, whether you are at school, wherever Black people are, they must find expression of developing themselves. And therefore, in 1971 to 72, Dr. Ben Wapa was then tasked with coming up with what then became the Black Community Program. And he led the Black Community Program. It was born around 1971-72. So that Black Community Program's offices were just adjacent to those of SASO in Beatrice Street, 86 Beatrice Street in Durban. And it became the center point of developing communities in our lives. Now, the Black Community Program then started a program of establishing different community programs throughout the country. I will mention a few. It established the Black Review publication. The Black Review publication was meant to reflect on the lives of Black people in a positive sense. Remember that the apartheid regime never reflected positively on the lives of Black people. So the first thing that was done by the Black Community Program was to establish a publication called the Black Review, which would reflect on the successes and the positive things that Black people were involved in. Then, of course, also it established training for the youth and youth development programs, which were meant to take the youth, including those that were in the forefront of SASO and the other political activities, to train them to be able to understand what it means to involve yourself with the lives of Black people. And then the BPC also, I think finally, many people will remember this, established Zanempilo Community Center at Izinyoka in Kim Williams' time. Now, this Zanempilo Community Center was serving two purposes. One was that it was a health center where people can be looked after in terms of their health facility, but it's also formed a center where the communities will meet and discuss political and other affairs of the community at this center. And so it became a center point where the Black consciousness movement will impart its knowledge on how to deal with the affairs of our people. So it was a very important area of interaction by community members. Now, also, the same Black Community Program established another center, which was in the south coast of Natal, which was called Solempilo, which was Eye of Health, which was also doing similar things, because the other was one was in the King Williamstown. Then another community health center was established by Comrade Mampila Rampila when she was bent to Tzaneen. She then continued there with the activities that she was doing at Zanempilo, because she was the chief medical officer at the Zanempilo Health Center. But when she was bent in 1977 and was restricted to Tzaneen, she decided to establish, again with the money and help of the Black Community Program, a health center in Tzaneen. So that's, if you can look at the brief story that I have given, I'm still going to continue with other projects. You would realize that central to the Black consciousness movement was that which I called total involvement. And that total involvement meant that wherever you are, you have to look after the affairs of your communities, including health. And in that community center in Tzaneen, she organized women to do vegetable gardens, sowing, and other activities that brought income to their lives. So apart from being a health center, because she was a medical doctor, she also organized those activities that were aimed at economic activity for Black people. But as you will remember, this center of the Black Community Program decided that because at that stage, Christianity in particular, but religion in general, was being used to subjugate Black people, was being used to preach elements of the Bible in a manner which does not reflect entirely on the context of the biblical texts. And this was discovered by those youngsters of that time who were studying in various theological seminaries. And they discovered as they read through documents, some of them are outside the Bible called Apocrypha, and they discovered that no, even during the time of Jesus Christ, there was life in the communities. And some of the writings were not consolidated to become part of the Bible that we now read. So they had decided to preach to all of us to say that there is an interpretation of the Bible which is part and parcel, which can be part and parcel of the lives of Black people. So the Black Community Program, again, they decided to fund a conference to debate as to what must be done in order to go forward with the interpretation of the gospel so that it can be relevant to the lives of Black people. And as such, the program called the Black Theology Program was born, led by, amongst others, people, the Son of Man, Stanley Ntwasa, and Reverend Muselane and others. And later, it was led by Wotakatso Mufokeng. So this is what Black consciousness does. It looks at how the community is involved in certain activities, all of them. That for total involvement, you have to look at all the activities that the communities, the Black community is involved in, and try to improve and make sure that those aspects of the community become relevant to their lives. Now, Biko being Biko, he then also decided to establish a trust called the Zimele Trust, also assisted by the Black Community Program. This Zimele Trust was meant particularly to deal with matters relating to political prisoners. When people were arrested, incarcerated, some serving sentences, some just being released after some many months. So it was meant to serve as a facility which can help them come back to activity and be able to again continue with the struggle. Again, this Zimele Trust involved itself in helping political prisoners, brick making in a place called Dimbaza in the Eastern Cape. Now this was very relevant because it was the beginning of the start also of the self-reliance leading to economic emancipation, so that our people must not sit down and just say, well, we live in apartheid, then therefore there's nothing we can do. So these projects that Steve Biko initiated involved the building of schools, building of clinics, daycare centers, and those are very relevant to the life of Black people, because daycare centers are very important for the old fellows clinics, very important, and the building of schools so that our children can have their own schools. And of late, you can realize that we normally send our children to white schools. We are no longer responsible for the education of ourselves. And if you look at Black consciousness, at that initial stage, it was already setting up schools, building schools, clinics, so that our people can be on their own and they can have self-reliance. They also, during that time, were setting up home-based industries and cooperatives, and even the question of leather works. And if you ask Comrade Bongo, he will tell you that one of the cooperatives that was initiated then, I think is still alive in Cape Town, and doing business just like all other businesses that are there. So this was very important departure point, so that people can see that doing community development through Black consciousness, it means total community development. It means in Black theology, it means in churches, it means anything that the Black community is involved in. You have to do that as, because as you remember, not everybody in life has the same inclination of doing the same thing all the time. No, people do various things depending on their talents. And Black consciousness says, wherever your talent points you to, please do something there which uplifts the Black community. If your talent is singing, yes, so be it. And if you have realized during the time of AZAPO now, during the time of AZAPO, many of our people in the arts, particularly in the sphere of producing songs, became very prominent. And the likes of Brenda Fassie, the young girl who just came from a very poor community because of Black consciousness and the promotion by AZAPO of the spirit of Black songs, because we were forced to sing in English, and Mabrur came there. She took the stage with songs that relates directly to our people. That is what Black consciousness wants. We want things that are relevant to our people, not those that are forced on them. So that's the other thing. But in keeping with that spirit of what I call the totality of involvement, after the banning of all the Black consciousness movement, things became what they were, and AZAPO came in. And when AZAPO came in, you would see again, I'm going to relate another story. You will see again AZAPO continuing in the same manner that Steve Biko and Ben Kwapa in the Black Community Program continued, except that there was no longer the Black Community Program. So, but the activities that followed were exactly in the same direction as before, because there was one revolutionary leader of AZAPO called Abu Aswat, who then continued on the establishment of clinics throughout what he was then referred to as the Transvaal, and Abu Aswat within AZAPO now as the Secretary for Health, established what was referred to as CHEP, which was again the Community Health Awareness Program. And it established a clinic, very functional, even after Abu has passed on. When people went to Limpopo at Haradingwana, you would find those equipments that were put there by AZAPO. And that community, even today, knows that there were liberating fighters who came to the rescue of the community. So we didn't wait for a government to facilitate health facilities for our people. So it's very clear that, so Abu Aswat, and he used to go around the country with a group of nurses to go and help communities from time to time as part of the AZAPO community development facilitation. Now, also, then came another time, right about 1984-85, where AZAPO established a number of advice centers, right? Now, many people would not see these as community development centers because these centers were used for various things of the community, including the arms struggle facilities. Absolutely, arms struggle facilities were used for were discussed at these centers. So these centers were established. We even established the Community Development, the Advice Centers Association, for purposes of doing many things, doing projects in the communities, making sure that when activists of the Black Consciousness Movement wanted to meet, because they were not normally favored by the system for meeting spaces, they would meet there. And then they became part and parcel of the recruiting areas for military training of the BCMA. This is very fundamental to me because there is an element of people who do not, well, who do not understand how the Black Consciousness Movement planned its armed struggle. They always believe that if you want to be in the armed struggle, you must stay somewhere in overseas, somewhere in the neighboring country, and then you must come back carrying guns. And more often than not, you don't cross the river before the system take all your guns. So the Black Consciousness, again, this is a very important thing for me. The Black Consciousness decided that's not what we are going to do. We are going to have our things inside the country. But I was not called upon to talk much about that. I'm just mentioning the issue to say advice centers of the Black Consciousness Movement established as community centers for our people to be serviced were also used for underground activities. It's very vital that when we relate history for our children, they must come to know that there were these centers, and there were many. There were Kronstadt. I can mention areas where they were put up. But apart from that, as the facilitator has said, indeed, when the trade union movement, there was an opening for them to be formed, the Black Consciousness Movement, that's again part of community development and facilitation. The Black Consciousness Movement jumped into that arena. And so many, he mentioned just a few, but so many, Blagu, Beu, Noops, I can go on in a list of unions that were established by the Black Consciousness Movement. And we actually even went further to establish AZAPO, and then finally merged with KUSA to become NACTU. So that's again total involvement in community affairs. Now, let alone the fact that those who were dealing with the aspect of the Black community and the aspect which are in labor. Then came a stage where the Black Consciousness Movement felt economic activities also have to be established. And some of us then thought that AZAPO is an organization which deals with matters of land. The land matter was very crucial to AZAPO. And the debate was that how can you have your policy on land and you're just sitting at home and then doing nothing to facilitate programs that will make our people to love the land, to till the land, to remember that they have knowledge about the land. So we established what is called People's Agricultural Development. And that People's Agricultural Development, which I led from 1993 up until 2001, when the organization sent me to Parliament. So it existed for a long time. And that organization, and I'm going to tell you how many projects were established by and where. And they were really striving projects under ourselves as the Black Consciousness Movement. Now, in the Eastern Cape, there were 30 of them around Aliste. 30 of them, and Siskai, Aliste and Siskai, 30 of those projects which deals with vegetables, piggery, and chicken rearing. And there was some of them were even linked to Kentucky fried chicken, linked to the villagers there, so that I suppose some of you might have been able to enjoy the chicken. You didn't know where they were coming from, but they were coming from our own people. You just felt, or I went to a Kentucky fried chicken and I got a chicken. We knew that some of the chicken you enjoyed there were chicken from our own people. So this notion of saying our people have no capacity, I don't know where it comes from. And then in KwaZulu-Natal, there were 11. And we also chose Musinga. And those who know the conflict around Musinga. But the strategy there again was community involvement, to say, if you bring something that can bring about economic activity, the community also will have a bit of focusing on things that brings life to themselves, and the conflict may be resolved slightly. And indeed, some of the guys who were there, people who were there, we saw communities now being very happy. So there were 11 of those projects there in KwaZulu-Natal. And then because KwaZulu-Natal has got the sugar plantations, some of them were, the projects were on sugar cane, vegetable and poultry. Limpopo, there were 24 on my count. There, because they like orchards, we then went on orchard, vegetable, piggery, and even fishery, although those ones were very few because people didn't understand how to grow the fishes. They were used to just getting them from the rivers, but we introduced a notion of that nature. Then in Gauteng, small place, we only had 3, poultry and vegetables. In Mpumalanga, there were 10 projects there. So you can see that if we were to talk about the country's provinces, at that stage, with all the limitations, AZAPO was already in about 4 to 5 province to do very important work. Now, let me just check time here whether I'm okay. No, I'm okay. I'm still okay. I'm not okay. But let me finish up quickly. I've checked time. I'm not okay. Quickly, then, when I went to Parliament, when I was mixing with my comrade who come from far with the Black Consciousness movement, comrades such as George Bongo, comrades such as Peter Jones, who come from far with, because Peter Jones actually was part and parcel of the people who were at Zanempilo. So we decided that we were not just going to sit down and leave things happen. We then formed Isbaya Development Trust, which is still alive, and we decided to focus on what we call integrated village renewal program. Now, let me just give you a bit of an idea. Integrated village renewal program means that if you go to a village and find they've got cattle, they've got, because at the villages that, at least there in the Eastern Cape, where we were operating the OR Tambo district, they already had cattle, they had already had crops around, some chicken. So when you want to integrate that particular village, you don't come there with something from government and say, I'm putting you on cooperatives, I'm putting you on that. You then decide to do the things that the community wants you to do, which means firstly, interaction with the community, and then be able to build the community with you. Now, and the program took a real a good form, because at the moment the program is in 56 villages. The Eastern Cape government knows, but they don't want to support it on the basis that the people who were leading it did not come from Congolos, finish and clear. And we knew it, and we used to talk about it, and we used to meet with some of them, but they wouldn't say so clearly. But they can see that the program is alive and is bringing good life to the communities. Instead of putting resources to it, they will dive and duck because possibly they wanted Congolese people to be in the leadership. But the program is viable, and I'm going to end up here because I'm getting a bit late. The program involves the following. You get into the village, we form what is called Village Development Association, so that the villagers must have their own organization which champions their own affairs. So that if money is no longer coming, that Village Development Association is theirs, they lead it, they elect their own leaders. And in that village association, we then decide to train one of the villagers, particularly the youth, to become a community development practitioner, right? Who then interacts with the villagers from time to time, call meetings so that they can do their development. And then all households in that village are entitled to belong to the Village Development Association. So if you are a villager, you will get a chance of coming there to talk about development work in your village, and even to do village survey to say, this is what we want, there is no water, there is no that. So we've got a lot of data relating to the village surveys that were done by villagers, not done by Nefolovhodwe and company. And once that has been done, then we come in with people who have expertise in order to get the villagers to go on with that. That was largely a program of fruit trees. There are lots of fruit trees. In fact, if I came with my statistics, they amount to thousands and thousands, and they are thriving. Even now, you can go and get your fruit there. But we then realized that, hey, sometimes you can produce more fruits than what you need. And then we went into another program of ours, which is now having to produce value-added products like jam. And if you go to some of the bed and breakfast, just now there is COVID, so they might not be functioning. But before COVID, you would, if you had gone to places like Port St. John, Lusikisiki, and you happen to be at a bed and breakfast place, you probably would have met some jam there, which was produced in the villages using Prama stoves, and because they don't have equipment. Again, it's a complaint from me, because we went to look for equipment which would facilitate that there's no electricity in those villages anyway, but we wanted some equipments that are better off than that. And for that matter, we were just helped by the University of Western Cape. Right. A university doesn't have resources. Whilst the resources were sitting somewhere there in the coffers of what I call the South African government. So this is a story I'm talking. If I can talk, and I can talk more, but I see I'm behind time. I want to make people talk to me. So I will stop there. I could talk more and more about doing community development through Black consciousness. It just means more or less what I was relating to you. I relate this story because I've been a participant. Even when I was president of AZAPO, I was still doing community development. I was still doing things that people will not believe, because I was at Velgespread Fellowship Center, where community development was part and parcel of that. So it doesn't mean that when you are a president of this, then you must leave running community things. In fact, that's what the area I want to talk about. These politicians, when they are politicians, they think that is just what they must do, talking nonsense sometimes, instead of helping the communities to live better. All right, thank you very much, my tower. This is a topic which just makes me to talk the whole day. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Neff. I know the passion that you have for community development, and it's always great listening to the contribution of the Black consciousness movement as you had just traced it, and what it paints is the picture of totality of involvement in our communities, and one wonders why it is that that has not permeated to what we see in the present day circumstances. That history that you have, it was a history of self-reliance. It was a history of people taking responsibility for their lives and ensuring that people are able to feed themselves, and people are able to look after themselves, and there's always food on the table. And I don't want to go into other aspects of food security or food sovereignty. I am an advocate of food sovereignty. Whilst other people talk about food security, and I really don't subscribe to that concept. I really believe in food sovereignty as a one of community development, because it really speaks to, you know, the heart of communities taking care of their lives. You know, they take care of their own around food production, mechanisms of food production, and making sure that they can, you know, come together as a community and produce food for themselves by measures and means that they subscribe to. You know, so but that's a subject for another day, not unless you want to comment on that. What I wanted to check is what has since happened. Where did the wheels come off, you know, with regard to, you know, community development, and not so much with regard to, you know, AZAPO's contribution, but, you know, just the people themselves. Why has it been that after the coming to power of the ANC, and all of a sudden people believed in dependency, and people believed in depending on you know, social grants from the government, and not so much on, you know, themselves? Every time we see community protests, they are about access to basic services that people can you know, fend for themselves about. Because, I mean, if you look at, you know, the whole concept of community development, it's about, you know, empowerment. It is about human dignity. It is about community inclusion. It is about social justice and self-determination. And ultimately, it is about what you call totality of involvement, you know, collective action in activities that empower people. And all of a sudden, we see people looking up to government to provide all of these things. Your comments on this?
Yeah, my comments are very short. Now, what has happened, which happens in all these other countries where what is called freedom has come, is that those who become the first liberation people to ascend to power, they then use those positions to continue to be voted in power. So what they do, yes, that's precisely what happened. What they do, they use whatever resources that are meant to make people self-reliant. They keep those resources to themselves. Towards elections, they dish out those resources so that they can then be elected on the basis that they are bringing something. You must know, oppressed communities all over the world, they need conscientization, and they need their consciousness of being dependent to be raised to a higher level. So one side is those that came into power who are using that platform in order to perpetuate themselves to be in power. On the other side are those revolutionaries who have not realized that our people need conscientization and consciousness at a higher level in order to defeat these nefarious tendencies of being voted as a result of bringing passes. Let me put my full stop there. Those two are running parallel. Those two are running. There are those revolutionaries who must also be told, don't sit at home and just look at wanting to go to parliament, because you'll be trapped into the status quo. You see, status quos are like that all over. Like once you agree you are going to play around the status quo, you are gone. Even if you've got good acumen, you've got to watch whether you are not thinking, because the status quo, what it does, that is why it has brought the toy of the workers. You see, the workers are made every time when they've got a grievance. It is the status quo which went to pass a law to say you toy this way in order to harness the power of the working class. Now, That's what I'm trying to. It's just that I don't have time because I can deal with that because it is the most difficult part of our South African society at the moment. If someone can't see that we have to operate outside the now created status quo, we are dead. We are dead. All right.
And that status quo is that of being a parliamentarian who forces people.
It teaches you all the nice things, and sometimes you get into a nice car. And by that token, now you are vying, and you find yourself being something else. And that's the, because they've created all these little things. That is why even if you are a poor fellow and you say my rights have been violated, well, get a lawyer. Where do you get a lawyer when you are coming from Tofimba? They say get a lawyer so that you can defend your rights. Now, what status quo is that which can defend me? I have to go and get another person whom I must have money to pay. So after all, now I sit at home at Tofimba. I say, let them do it and I can receive parcels. All right.
We are in conversation with Comrade Nef. We affectionately call him Comrade Nef, and you know, he is a stalwart of our movement, and he can talk about these things until cows come home, really. And you're more than welcome to engage him in conversation. And one way of doing so is by logging your comments and questions on the Q&A or on the chat, or raise your hand and make your voice heard. So this is conversations about community development of our people, and he has contributed quite tremendously in this arena of totality of involvement, and he's always spoken very passionately about totality of involvement. And you know, going back to the integrated village renewal program, what has been the biggest success of that program thus far?
The biggest success of that program thus far is that up to today, we no longer have much money to raise wherever we're raising it, because international organizations says no, they are bringing money through government. They say you have got a democratic government, so go there and get money. We are going to send ours there. So that's another trap. But that's what they are saying. So we end up here being an NGO which does not have much resources. But their success, I can send you there any day. Just go there and say you want to establish this and that and that and that and that. They will tell you, no, Tina, we are Israel people. As a collective, you remember I was talking about community development associations.
Yeah.
Those associations was to cushion our people from being exploited. So when you go there, that's the success. You must meet that association, even if Nefolovhodwe is not there. They will tell you what they want. And only when the association and them have agreed, or this is what we want, then you can have your community do, including government. That's why sometimes government gets a little bit of difficulty, because they say, no, we know you are coming, but please bring your matter to our association of the village, which has to go. No person would, if you don't stay in that village, you can't be elected in that association. So that's my biggest achievement. The second achievement is the one that I was trying to boast about. Or you can go and have fruits. You can go and have fruits. You can go to Port St. John's and you might find stalls there of our people selling their food. In fact, what was making us to be in trouble was that Port St. John at that stage was not very functional. Those who come from the Eastern Cape, they know, was not functional. So there was not much. Even if you send our people to go and put stalls, they will, those fruits will rot. So we were forming these cooperatives, where in fact we had already formed a cooperative Yamaketi, wherein all the villagers will come to some place which we were negotiating with the municipality that they must create a facility with all the air conditions so that the fruits of our people must not rot. Then it will be, the fruits will be brought by each village bring the fruits there, facility is there, then there will be a truck. And that truck is not government truck again. It is truck of this cooperative we were forming, which buys the truck from the proceeds of the various villagers, and then it takes it to Mtata, because in Mtata we had already got some of these shops who are saying, if you bring so much of this kind of fruits, we are going to take. But thus far, now I'm here in Joburg now, and Peter Jones is disabled, and we are again trying to raise appropriate funds in order to go back. But at the moment, we fear nobody. That those villages are, and in fact, we have just heard, I mean, if Bongo is listening, he can give you that, because Bongo does interact with the villagers now. They are recruiting on their own other villages to come to the program. Yeah, we are not there, but they are doing that on their own. I'm saying 56. Those villages definitely must be more by now. So those people, I can tell you, they're the most, and also we then associated with the ARC. This is a Scientific Agricultural Research Council. The Agricultural Research, ARC. We associated with it from the beginning, because we went to them in struggle terms. We went to them in struggle terms and said to them, you guys, you have been producing a lot of scientific material, and this we're going to the formal white farmers. This is what they call the big farmers here. So we said, no. This is New South Africa. You've got now to give us that scientific knowledge. It must be planted in the villages. They
so
actually gave us scientists. Scientists they gave us who went to the village to check whether this works. And that's why we are successful. That's why I'm mentioning it. The success is that we are linked to a scientific knowledge, which is now the scientific knowledge which you find in the OR Tambo district, particularly on fruit trees. We actually get the fruit trees from the young ones from Nelspruit. And we carry those fruit trees, all these years, carry those fruit trees by trucks to the Eastern Cape as a result of our association with the ARC. But now we were using politics at the beginning to say, no. You can't feed the same status quo when you've got villagers there who are dying, who need this knowledge. But no, don't worry. We are going to send you scientists, and they did. And also the students they were training during holidays. You would find them us with the students there. They get some marks to go back and pass. And now that to me, I feel comfortable as I sit here.
No, that's good. We have a question or comment from Comrade Nelvis Kagama there. Comrade Nelvis, if you may just unmute yourself and make your contribution.
Thank you, Comrade Sintiwe, and thank you, Comrade Neff. I think Comrade Neff has explained it beautifully, that a community development, the type of community development that was at a horizontal level, where people themselves took the initiative and where people themselves decided what they want to do about their own development, their own self-determination, used to happen as he explained. But he has also explained, it seems to me, that has now been undermined beyond opposed democracy, because it seems now that people are now folding their arms, hoping that a government will come in, that trucks will come in, and it seems now the concept of service delivery has taken over, and so people are holding arms. Unfortunately, the concept of service delivery is tied to votes. It is now no longer community development. It is now community intervention for votes, where people are holding back. And unfortunately, again, Comrade has explained that the money now no longer goes to the people or the villages. It goes straight to government, and government goes and buy votes. But the question I'm asking is, Comrade Neff, how does now horizontal development regroup? But it does not regroup only to do, subsistence development, from hand to mouth, car wash and so forth. How do we do serious community development where we enter and break into mainstream economy as a people and linked to industries, big industries? Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you very much, my comrade Tekem. Really, you have raised a very fundamental matter, and I'm very pleased to get into it. I have always had this belief, as you can see my agitation, that any organization, it doesn't matter which one is it, if you don't form living organs that will facilitate something you want to happen.
Oh, yeah.
In order for any buying of votes into something, firstly, the person must know that he won't be supported by anybody from government. If its support comes, it comes once and twice. Later, it can be stopped strategically so that it fades. So that person must know, no, I'm on my own. Again, he goes back to black consciousness. I'm on my own. I can see my community is being harassed by all sorts of nonsense, and I am going to intervene. So the first thing is to have a facilities. That's why I was very clear when I was relating the story of the Black Community Program, because that became a facility that mushrooms in various places. So those who are very serious is to consolidate and actually establish first. It can be a foundation. Foundations are too many now. It might just be an offshoot, which is like the Black Community Program. And then when it is there, its job is to look strategically at things that can build the Black communities and bring about real things and real change. Because as soon as the communities are on their own, they don't care who says what. And that's the advice I can give. And I think we are not late. If you are in AZAPO, I don't think you are late to establish that facility, which actually just look around, see a strategic matter is happening, and be able to pull the Black people together. They are there. There are a lot of Black people at the moment, particularly the younger generation. I don't want to go. It's another topic which one day I will go into. The younger generation is yearning to destroy what you created in 1994. They are really yearning to destroy it. Hey, they are.
No,
but
they
the
are.
only problem is that I'm not seeing consolidation, so I don't want to go there. Okay, that's what I can say.
No, I think linked to, I'm not sure if Comrade Nelvis wants to follow on, but linked to all of this is, the current complex of what you may call a mental trap of the 1994 thing, and which seems to be systemic right now. How do we resolve this complex? That would then enable people to take responsibility and do the kind of things that you are saying, that they need to begin to take care of their lives and begin to rise, above this complex mental trap of, dependency. Because I mean, even all these people, you were there in Parliament and you know how they function, and they all divert you to, this fund or that fund that comes from government support, and they force you to wait for the next vote, so that they only release those funds 6 months into the next vote, so that they can buy you, to basically send them back to Parliament, and you wait another 5 years. So the real question here is, how do we emancipate our communities from, the mental ensnare, that has been brought about by 1994.
Yeah, thank you again. Our job really is twofold: organize and conscientize. Because the community, that is the Black community, particularly the older generation, with due respect, the older generation, they are preoccupied. Even on WhatsApp, sometimes I see they're preoccupied in enhancing what they had achieved. That's when you read their WhatsApps, every day you read, there's no projection about what should the question you're asking me. I can't see it. I only see a fellow talking about, hey, last time, 19 what, this is what we were doing at develop. And a fellow, if tomorrow you will read again. So you can't go any forward if there is nobody who is pushing to go into new grounds. There are new grounds. Now I believe, because I'm a little scientist in my head.
Is it not about defending your legacy then?
Yeah. But sometimes you are not very conscious that you are actually doing so, because these things they happen in life. You also want to be, and the negative side of that defending of legacy is that you can make others love your legacy, particularly the younger generation. You make them to love because they are impressionable. So once they love your legacy, they have no capacity to create new legacies.
Yeah,
absolutely no capacity, and you might be surprised. But once you do that, so if you are okay and revolutionary, don't allow younger generations to always love your legacy. There's nothing wrong with them loving you, but tell them that no, don't love it to the extent that you don't create. So teach them a loophole, because when they create, some of their creation can destroy your legacy in terms of what they want, and then you become angry. So you've got to free your thinking cap also to say, or let me create other thought processes that's the only way to break, as you are saying, Maitao, to break away from what you are asking me, is that there must be a facilitation, and a very vigorous facilitation for the creation of new ideas and the creation of new things. I can't be Steve all the time. Hey, Steve lived a long time ago. That is why the ANC, now I can talk nicely, that is why the ANC is failing. It's not failing because it's failing because it believes in a document which was a long time written, and they think it can apply now. It's like the Christians. The Christians were in trouble, and I want to apologize to the Christians. They were in trouble. They went and read the Bible, and Museveni also read the Bible. It says, no, everybody who can have a love affairs with another of his own sex is sodomy. And then there is the LGBT society now. It's a new thing, man. And they are unable to come out of it because they are locked up with the reading of the that time, I don't know when Jesus was here, but that they are locked up in that. Society changes. It moves from one point to the other, and we have to live with it, and we must learn to understand that it does so. Right? But if I had time, I will tell you how God does not interfere in us knowing new things, because He has created us with enough. He has created us with enough brain to be able to discover new things. So why do we keep on going to God and asking Him for? But that's the logjam I'm trying to say. If you want to unlock, believe in the younger generation. I've also learned, Mata.
But you see, all of you, you are saying what you are saying, believe in the younger generation, and you do, but you don't trust them. In as much as you believe that it is their responsibility to transform and move forward, you don't trust them enough to give them the space to implement whatever solutions they need. A typical example would be your own organization, which still looks up to you for leadership. It still wants Nefolovhodwe to lead it forward. When Nefolovhodwe is here defending his own legacy and trying to correct on the basis of the known. So what makes this contradiction to exist, and how do we really and enable young people to be young? You in your young years, or what is it, your youth, were given the space to make your own mistakes. You are given the space to carve your own ideas, and you enabled us to have a philosophy that we are very proud of. And what is left is for you to then harness, the young people, enable them to further develop and enhance this philosophy to answer the present day reality. And the present day reality is well understood by younger people of today. And we need to get to that point of unleashing young people and enabling them to do their own analysis and provide their own solutions to the problems that they see.
Let me just come in there. You heard me talking about Steve Biko forming that trust. And that trust, Steve Biko, amongst others, right, was a training facility to train the youth on various matters, including leadership. Now I was taken to a leadership school, and Harry Nengwekulu was facilitating. And there they were actually telling us, hey, you are going to be leaders of tomorrow. But maybe that's why my mind has no problem with certain things. So we have to do that. But as I told you, my tower, legacies are very different, very dangerous phenomenon. They are okay because they protect me, because I lived the life and I don't want it to be disturbed. But once you can make the youth only to love your legacy, right? And as they grow, they don't see any, and you don't open up a gate which says, hey, you can love this legacy, but create other legacies. Right? It can be you, because not everybody will create a good legacy like Steve, but it can be you and your friends. But if you don't open up, and that you must do deliberately, you must do it deliberately. If my organization is not doing so, it's in trouble. It is in trouble. It is in trouble. It will lose all the brain of the youth. And once it has lost that brain, then your honor as an organization then dies. But those who want their legacy to be protected, and they want to be given Stulo A versus Stulo B, and they want to live on those Tulo, they are in trouble, because even when it is like that, there is another very big saying, which says things, whether we like it or not, they do happen independent of our will. Yeah, of our will. But
Indeed.
unfortunately, that path takes longer. That independent of our will, it will happen, but it does that. It takes that long because it goes a natural route. So you need agitators who can facilitate that natural will to occur. And then you need people who can open up this gate. I'm telling you, this gate must be open of trusting that we are not going. Never won't be 20 again. That's the problem. People can't see. I won't be 20 again. And so that space must be created for others to occupy it. And you must know, they use sometimes, they are lucky. They use sometimes their mind are very lucky. They are very creative at that stage because it is a stage where they are not protecting anybody or their legacy. They don't have a legacy to protect. So they are very creative. They can come with things that. But if Nefolovhodwe is sitting there at a meeting, say AZAPO, and looking for his or her legacy, Nefolovhodwe will always stand and say, "We used not to do things that way." That's a block. You are blocking. You are because indeed, if you used not to do things that way, leave things to be done. All right. I don't want to.
No, it's fine. I think it's okay.
Argue.
I think it's okay. It's okay for Nefolovhodwe to defend his legacy, and it's also okay for him to allow that legacy to be challenged. And
Yes.
I think at some point we need the reconscientization of the conscious. You always speak of the need for conscientization, but don't we think that we need the reconscientization of the conscious? Why is it that the conscious are unable to permeate through these young people and enable them to be conscious of their situation? What do we need to do to change this cycle? Because I mean, it's very systemic and it's very cyclical. What do we need to do? Yes, I hear you saying, no, we need to conscientize and we need to organize. And then what? I'm conscious, I am here, I am young, and I want to be activated with my consciousness. What is it that is missing? What is the missing link that we seem to be missing somewhere that would then reactivate these young people to take the necessary action that will take us forward as we move towards the conclusion?
One of the things that you have to do and understand is that an organization, it doesn't matter which one, doesn't really matter which one, has got a tendency of being itself. And it can be very restrictive because as the organization is founded and it's developed and it's led, it depends on who is leading it, and it goes. It formulates barrier lines, which you will not discover unless you've got a critical mind. It formulates barrier lines, and sometimes the majority of followers of that organization accept the barrier line. And there comes Nefolovhodwe who does not accept that. Yo. It will be, hey, sit down, whatever. That's what nature in Alimata, it has got its own ramification. So if we were to break through that, the only breakage, it's really through conscientization, because conscientization, which is not form, you mustn't try to think you will conscientize those who are straight-jacketed. They will kick you out and you will be in trouble. Right? So you will have to try to find other ways of breaking, because just like fighting a status quo, you can't fight a status quo simply from within, because on its own, it has got its own elements of protection. And one of it is expulsion. And after some years, it realizes, hey, Hashe was correct. But the time has gone, also has died misery, and then so I can only say the following so that I can close. I can only say the following. I am prepared as a person in my organization to start this discussion. That very discussion. I'm now old enough that nothing can really happen to me. If you want to say expelled, it will be of no consequence, because there's no longer anything. It will be of no consequence. You can do that, and I'm no longer. But when I'm still in contest and I want something in this, yeah, I might be. Now I'm okay now, because whether you do that, even my legacy is already there. So you can't go and throw it out, except that you keep on saying, we expelled him on such and such a day. But that, what are you going to do with that? Right?
Yeah,
I become me now. I'm me forever. Right? So I'm prepared if there are people, even if they are not there, because I'm also now here talking on the same platform, where I'm prepared to do what it takes to make the use of the Black consciousness movement to recognize that they are the future of the Black consciousness, not as individuals. I'm not talking about individual A I know well. No, there are individuals I know, of course, but I'm talking about as a collective. This organization, they know it. They also know it, that this organization is falling. It's falling. It's not something that you must worry about. It is gone, and we can allow it to go. So now I'm prepared, without getting into the little thing, but going into the revolutionary way of looking at where the organization must be. That is why I introduced the question that the use of my movement, I'm getting worried now as I sit at home. I'm not seeing anything else. I'm going to die very soon, and there will be a vacuum, because the strategy is not so much. Let me return back. Now, to me, it's not so much that someone will be president, someone will be that. Really, that is of no consequence. Yeah. My strategy is to see an image of a formidable party that can change the life of my people. It has got a capacity to change, and to change a society. You can't change it only just a single individual. So there has to be a movement, which is and if I were to end to say, even that movement must move towards a mass base. And to control a mass-based organization, if you protect your legacy, hey, it's very difficult. Because mass-based, it means, hey, there will be lots of what Mao said, let the flowers blossom. And when they blossom, hey, they know. No.
And they may trample upon your legacy as they blossom.
Yeah, as they blossom, because they are new, they blossom. And they don't even look at it, or hey, can I blossom this way? They just blossom. All right.
Yeah, as always, it's always great to be in conversation with Comrade President Pandelani Nefolovhodwe, and we shall end it there for today. And I really look forward to next weekend. Next Sunday is the 21st of March, and it will be another, memorable day as we commemorate the slaying down of our people on the 21st of March. And we will be in conversation with a number of stalwarts again, and so it will be a reflection of the day. It will be a reflection of the contribution of the people of that time, and reflecting on 21 March and reflecting on its contribution to the development of Black consciousness, and just reflecting on what 21st March did to advance the course of struggle. So, amongst the people I will be having on the platform is Ndate Mulifepet. So it's going to be an interesting conversation. Please join me again on this platform next Sunday. I look forward to your conversation with us at that day. Thank you very much. And have a
Thank you, my comrade. See you then.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Listen, the struggle was not grand. I experienced it, being deprived, being oppressed, even confused. It's enough now, we're taking the power back. We're stronger than before, we're proud, prouder, too strong.